Okay, Mr. Faiz, the floor is yours now.
Mr. Faiz, you have to unmute. Okay.
Hello everyone. Assalamualaikum. Good morning. Hi
Good morning.
everyone. How are you? Welcome everyone to the session. I've been told that there is an international participant today. So welcome. Thank you for sharing your valuable time to join this session. Hi, my name is Faiz. I will be the moderator for today. This is the one of the early webinar session for 2021 brought to you by National Competitiveness Group, MPC. So before I move on, I would like to go through how this session works. This is a 1-hour session, and into this program, I think I will divide the session into 2 sessions. So the first session is the talk from our Sifu and also the Q&A session. But in between the session, the audience are allowed to ask questions. Okay, for your information, everyone here is under mute mode. So how to ask the question? You can type your question in the question box that you can see at the bottom of your apps. I advise you to type the question in the question box, not in the chat box. Okay, good news for today. There is a giveaway for all of you that join this session. Everyone here who joins this session will be given a certificate of attendance by MPC. But there is a but. You have to join us until the end of the session. So at the end of the session, we will provide you a link in the chat box. Just click on the link, fill up the form from the Google form provided. It will, and I will remind this at the end of the session again. So we move on to today's session. Overview of GCR Report 2020. The 2020 special edition of the Global Competitiveness Report series comes out at a very difficult and uncertain historical moment. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has not only led to a global health crisis and deep economic recession, hence deeper than the downturn during the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis, but has also created a climate of a profound uncertainty about the future outlook. The GCR report series has since the first editions aimed to prompt policymakers beyond short-term growth and aim for long-term prosperity. The 2019 edition of the Global Competitiveness Report showed how declining trends in fundamental aspects of productivity have been masked by a long-standing accommodative monetary policy but have remained bottleneck for the strengthening economic development. Now let's join Mr. Lawrence Kong reveal the overview of the Global Competitiveness Report 2030 Special Edition. Before I pass the session to our speaker, I would like to share a little bit of our expert. Mr. Lawrence Kong is a certified Six Sigma Master Belt and a quality productivity trainer from NextMU Private Limited, which is Motorola University, which he founded in 2011. He is an electrical and electronic engineer by practice. Prior to starting NextMU company, Lawrence started his career in Motorola Electronics and worked there for 15 years before joining Motorola University's external training and consulting group as a Lean Six Sigma consultant. Among his various positions held in Motorola Electronics are reliability engineer, software quality engineer, manufacturing quality engineer, quality information system manager, compliance engineering manager, and Six Sigma Black Belt program manager. Mr. Lawrence has more than 20 years of extensive experience as a practitioner in teaching and sharing, project mentoring, coaching, and consulting to various multinational companies embarking on business processes management and continuous improvement program. In the last decade, he has been actively working with many small and medium enterprises in Singapore in the various productivity, creativity, innovation, leadership, quality improvement, and continuous improvement program as a part of local government national productivity and innovation initiative in transforming the nation into highly productive and innovative workforce. He has provided consulting service in diverse industries and functions such as infocom, media and design, logistics and storage, electronics, precision engineering, general manufacturing, financial services, retail, food and beverage, administrative and support services, university, academia, non-governmental organization, construction, hospitality, aviation services, laboratory testing services, and the government, and the list of experience continues without end. Academically, he possesses a Master of Business Administration from Swiss German University and a Bachelor of Science in Economics from USM. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Lawrence Kong. Hi, sir. How are you, sir?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Pikes, for the
Good morning.
introduction. Good morning to the people who are joining us today. I'll be speaking with you on the GCR 2020. This is the special edition. So my role today, I'm looking at it as someone who's trying to introduce the special edition to you, because this year is a bit different compared to the years before. I'll be talking about the content of the special edition in a summarized form. After all, we only have 1 hour. How it is different from previous years. I'll be sharing with you what it is all about, and how we can take advantage of the recommendations put forward by the special editions, so that we can also take reference on what we can do to revive and transform our economy going forward. Yeah. So I hope you can see these slides. Before I move on to the content, let me give a bit of history, so that for those of you who are interested, or at least join us for the first time, you know what this is all about before we move on to look at the content. After all, if you know how it came about, it will give you a better understanding, and the appreciation is better. Actually, the World Competitiveness Report, it was co-published by not just the World Economic Forum, in short WEF, but also by IMD, the International Institute for Management Development. So because of the co-publishing, there was 2 publications involved, because of the joint collaboration. But the collaboration relationship ended in 1996. So IMD, WEF, they published their own world economy rankings. Yeah. So I think for those of you who are familiar, IMD is publishing the World Competitiveness Yearbook, WCY, whereas WEF continues the publication of the GCR. So which is what we're going to touch on today, the GCR 2020 by the WEF. If you look at the definitions of competitiveness by both organizations, contextually they are a bit different. Yeah, if you look at the definitions, IMD looks into how economies sustain more value creations from the enterprises in the economy to create prosperity for the people. At the WEF, they are looking into the level of productivity, how this links to the level of prosperity in the economy. But there's a common element between these 2 definitions, which is the level of prosperity. Yeah. So the competitiveness definitions by both organizations are looking into prosperity for nations. So which in turn will be explored later, how WEF defines the competitiveness to compare different economies, to see how economies sustain the level of prosperities for its people. So just to compare between IMD and WEF, you can see because of the different comparisons, both organizations, they take on different sets of factors, different number of economies, different criteria. WEF has lesser criteria compared to IMD, but WEF relies a bigger proportion on survey data compared to IMD. IMD relies more on hard data, statistical data, but WEF relies more on the executive opinion survey. You can see close to half of the data collected from the 142 economies consists of soft data, right? So I'll be sharing with you how they calculate the scores by aggregating, right, to a final country score so they can compare, right? So you can then appreciate how WEF compares the economies. WEF splits the indicators into 12 pillars, right? So like IMD, they have 4 factors, which in turn will have sub-factors before we reach the criteria, right? So this is a bit different from WEF. We'll look at the 12 pillars afterwards. Now, how did the Global Competitiveness Index come in? Now, before we have the GCI, the Global Competitiveness Index, which is reported in GCR, there used to be the Growth Development Index based on the economic ranks. So we also have microeconomic ranks, which is the Business Competitiveness Index. These are combined to form the GCI. So the 2 individuals who were responsible for this GCI, Xavier and Elsa. I think you probably have heard about them. They are Spanish-born, but I think they are brought elsewhere. The surname is a bit different. You can see first Salah, for example, from Xavier, that is the paternal name because they are from Catalonia. Right? Same for Arkady, this is the paternal name. Martin, this is the maternal name. Right? I is a conjunction. Right? So Xavier is a given name. Elsa, probably have heard about her. She used to be an academic and politician. Right? She used to be, I think she is still a member of the parliament in Catalonia. Right? Previously, she was a member of the minister of the presidency and government spokesperson. Right? So they came up with the GCI, right, by combining the macro and micro economic ranks and indices to compare economies. Right? So this actually was introduced since 1979. Okay. Now let me show you the measurement indicators, how the GCI works. The GCI has a framework. Right? The framework is now at 4.0. So they call it GCI 4.0 framework. There are 4 main, what we call categories. So later on, we'll look at how the 2020 special edition recommends the revival and transformation recommendations based on these 4 categories. So the 4 categories you can see on the page. Right? So within which there are many pillars, and all of them, there are 4 pillars. So when you look at a certain category, you can see which pillars are responsible for measuring the different categories. We all know the economies are different, right? So when we compare the competitiveness, we cannot just compare by GDP. GDP doesn't capture political, it doesn't capture social, cultural factors, right? So the GCR therefore measures the ability of the economies to provide high level of prosperity. So this depends on how productively the countries or the economies use the available resources, right, to sustain the prosperity. So the GCI here is a measure of different things. You can see institutions, policies, factors, right, to set the sustainable current and medium term levels of prosperity. So,
Mr. Lawrence, sorry.
Yes.
There is one question from the floor.
Yes.
What is the connection or related issues between GCR and CPI?
CPI?
Yeah, I think consumer index, I think.
I see. Okay, let me go back to this slide. So the question is to compare between the GCI and the consumer index.
Yeah.
I think I have to know more about that index. What is the definition of the customer index or consumer index?
Okay.
So I'm sorry, I don't really know the consumer index that you refer to, but the global competitiveness index, it has combination of not just the ranking measured based on businesses from the privates. So it actually combines this enterprises, what you call business competitiveness index, together with a macroeconomic ranking. So this actually measures a rather high level measurement of growth um, in the factors of production, because we look into the production of the economy, labor, capital, plus total factor productivity. These measures are factors that cannot be explained by the labor, capital, and other inputs. So the GCI actually measures more, if I would just think about the consumer index, than just what the behavior or the preferences of the consumer of certain products and services. This GCI measures things that drive total factor productivity. The productivity here does not refer to how much you can do like in an enterprise, but it refers to how much you can generate gains in a long-term economic growth. So if I would just to explain it loosely, the GCI actually measures a rather high level measurement of the economy. It's like a compass for the policymakers, stakeholders, so that they can take reference to see what matters for long-term growth. They can take reference on this GCI to shape their holistic economic strategies. Okay, hopefully that explains. But otherwise, we can explore more if we have time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Doctor.
So where was I? Okay, the top pillars. The top pillars actually place an emphasis on what matters in a fourth industrial revolution, right? So you can see human capital, agility, resilience, most importantly, innovations. Yeah? So I think you can see going forward, we're going to have more webinars coming up that targets innovation ecosystem, right? This GCI is a composite indicators, right? It does not refer to just one indicator. It's a computation based on many indicators. So because of that, the calculation of the score is successive aggregation, right? So you can see from the lowest level of indicators, the score from the executive opinion survey will be collected, and then this will be calculated as an average, and then it will be rolled up to the pillar level, and then to the whole GCI level. So each country will have one measurement to see, whether it's competitive or not. The higher, the better. Okay, so let's look at 2019, because this is the latest ranking we have for Malaysia with the other economies. Yeah, because 2020 there's no more ranking provided. Therefore, it's a special edition. That's why we have to, give an overview. Malaysia was ranked 27 out of 141 economies in 2019. Right? So this rank actually dropped from the year before by 2 positions compared to nations who are our neighbors. You can see Singapore remains number 1 on top. Hong Kong, Japan, they are rather high. But Malaysia, despite the ranking, we are still relatively higher than the median ranking of the East Asia and the Pacific region ranking. Right? So overall, Malaysia is still ranked rather high in the region. So you can see all the 12 pillars. The scores are given in the vertical bars, and the rankings of the different pillars are displayed at the bottom. So the scores, the higher the better. Of course, the ranking, the lower the better. Right? So you can see Malaysia 2019, based on the survey done then, normally is in the first, second quarter of the year. The strong pillar performance, Malaysia, financial system, labor market, product market, business dynamism. These are a few pillars that Malaysia perform well compared to the rest of the pillars. Some are actually quite low. You can see, for example, health pillar is actually quite low. This health pillar actually is part of the human capital category. So we're going to explore more on that in other webinars, right? Or on all these specific performance and what we should do, right? So again, this is just a summary. I'm just going to go relatively fast. So what is special in 2020? What is special? There are a few things that are special, right? So the first thing you already know, there's no ranking given by WEF on the different economies. GCI is not published as such, like how they used to since many years ago. Because like what Mr. Faik said, you know, this is a difficult time for us, uncertain time for us, the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, right? So we are hit by this crisis. It's a global health crisis. Because of that, we also are into some kind of economic recession. You know, some experts claim that this recession is even worse, even deeper than a downturn during the 2008-2009 financial crisis. So this uncertainty actually gives the motivation that we should look into the basics, and it's a call to reset, you know, to reset a lot of the things that we're doing, because we are kind of going backward, you know, so we have to build back better. There's a theme that is given by WEF this year, build back better, or building back better. You know, the immediate priority is to give the crisis, you know, some retarder, right? So we can set priorities to respond to the crisis. At the same time, we have to reflect on a few things. Right? What are basic drivers for growth, basic drivers for productivity, right? So this have been degraded since the financial crisis. Right? So some actually are improving before the pandemic. Some actually are not improving that much. So we have to rethink and reflect. You know, what are the basic drivers to the growth of the economy for us to set our priorities straight, you know, for different time frame. So later on, I'm going to show you the 3 time frame the WEF is proposing, the priorities for us to look into what we should do in the immediate term, the medium term, and the long term. Right? So this GCR special edition will give a prompt to our Malaysia policymakers, not just to focus on short-term growth, but long-term prosperity. Right? So this 2019 edition of GCR that I shared just now, you can see some of the performance on the indicators in the pillars. They are showing downward trends. Right? So those are basic standpoint of productivity. So the downward trends are still bottleneck, right, in our economic development. If we want to strengthen it, we have to build that better. Right? So you can see, because of the crisis, WEF is talking about recovery, revival, transformation. Right? So this refers to the 3 timelines that I'll be showing you afterwards. How we should do immediately, right, to recover our people, our economy, our growth, our health, yeah, before we can revive in a medium term, before we look into what we should do to transform the agility of the human capital, the environment, the ecosystem, how we can introduce or emphasize more on innovation to transform the long-term priorities. So the 3 P targets, productivity, people, planet, is what WEF is focusing on this year. After all, our planet is attacked, right? So we have to make sure our people survive and be healthy. Otherwise, you know, no human capital, no growth. Simple as that. Yeah. So this break in 2020 on not comparing all economies will be reverted in 2021 this year. So the next report you're going to see, we will then see the you know, the past comparison on the GCI index. So let me walk you through quickly right? So the methodologies and definitions are used in the current report so that you know what has been compared and how WEF compared the economies, if not GCI, what and how did they compare? And so I guess this will be useful for the audience. I suggest for audience who would like to know more, you can download the full report of the GCR 2020 special edition, right? They will give you a lot more details and granularities. So the transformation framework that's introduced here, there are 11 priorities. 11 priorities. Yeah, I'll show you the next one. Based on 19 concepts and 63 indicators. Yeah, so the priorities, they are shown over here. I'll just pick up some to walk you through. Right? The priorities focuses on the public institutions. Right? So we need to again look into basics. You know, what are the institutions and principle to build long-term vision, to build trust. Nowadays, I think people are losing trust in a lot of things, including our states, including our government, in some sense, because of the pandemic. So I think this is probably one of the most immediate thing the government will have to build to regain back the trust from the people. Upgrading infrastructure, this is ongoing, but I think there are certain things we have to pay attention to because of the pandemic. You know, ICT, people are relying more to online means to meet, for example, relying on software, relying on technologies to work. So this becomes like more acute, right, in the pipeline of upgrading. Taxation. I think what government can help is to think about how corporations are taxed, how individuals are taxed. Right? So I can look into perhaps a different kind of way to motivate them. For example, not to lay off people, instead come up with some kind of flexible taxation for them to retain the people. After all, human capital is something that we're losing a lot during this time. Not just loss of lives, but people, you know, attrition, losing jobs, losing means of earning. So this taxation would be some mean the government can help. Because of people, we are losing people, human capital. We should continue to look into investment in grooming generations of tomorrow, right? To allow them create jobs for tomorrow. So education curricula, these are things that we've been talking about in Malaysia for a long time. Yeah. So I think this is especially true at this time that we need refresh, revised skills. Yeah. The new norm is very different from how it used to be. If you don't change the way we you know, educate, we're just going to be run over if you don't move. Labor laws, social protection, this need to be revisited. How the what do you call the for example EPF, for example the contribution of the individual, of the enterprises, how this should be different going forward. Right? If you want to keep our workforce healthy so they can sustain their life. Infrastructures on the different care systems, educare, childcare, healthcare, right? They need to be innovatively changed, right? To see how we should move forward. Incentives in the financial resource for long-term investment, this needs to be incentivized. Competition antitrust framework, this needs to be, again, we have competition law, right? But I think we need to see how this will drive with the fourth industrial revolution, right? To ensure market access, both in local scene and international trade. You see these markets for tomorrow or markets of tomorrow pop out a lot. This has been the focus going forward, how we can prepare ourselves, you know, to face the world tomorrow. So I think with that in mind, how do we work backwards? Create the resources needed, create the brains needed, create jobs to align ourselves for the markets of tomorrow. Otherwise, many of us will lose our jobs as it is. Number 10, patient investment. This refers to long-term investment. be patient, sabar. In R&D, innovation, invention. Lastly, not probably last, but I think this is probably the most important. How to enhance creativity, human capital, to embrace diversity, equity, inclusion, right? To include everybody, to include opportunities. They are equal for everybody. So just a snapshot, how these priorities, concepts are being aligned to different indicators. Right? So I'm not showing everything. This is a snapshot. Taking, say, for example, priority number 2. There are 3 concepts here. They are aligned to priority number 2, to upgrade infrastructure. So the 9 indicators, they are aligned within these concepts. They are shown over here. So you can see the values are given according to the survey, according to the experts in different industries, using the range of values that they can assign. Normally, the survey is with a scale of 1 to 7. Right? So these are normalized based on weightage. So there's some weightage to a certain way of aggregating. So you can see the minimum, maximum will be 0 to 100. Of course, the higher the number, the better. Yeah? So according to the EOS survey, the scale of 1 to 7, 1 is the worst in the world. 7 is the best in the world, right? So we want to have higher scores in all the different themes and topical areas, right? So the EOS survey, there are 80 questions, right? So they will separate the questions according to the themes and topics. And they also survey small, medium-sized companies and large companies. Definition of the size of the companies are given over here. 250 staffs in a company. It is small, it's large, otherwise it's SMEs. Yeah. They also make sure 1/3 at least of the companies are large and 1/3 are small. Right? So the remaining 1/3 determined by the structure of the economy of the countries. Right? This is in proportion of what GDP they attain and the company size they have. So this varies according to companies in different, high income, more developed, emerging, or developing. Yeah. So the coverage on the regions are extensive, and they survey across different sectors in different activities. You can see on the screen over here. So they try to segment the different sectors to collect different voices. Yeah. So just to put them in numbers. Just to put it in numbers. So you can see out of the 80 questions, these are passed to 126 economies. As many as 14,000 business executives are being invited to participate in giving opinions to the different themes and topics. These were done in 42 languages, mostly done online because of the pandemic. Otherwise, it used to be a mixture of both online and hard copies. The responses, of course, it's not equal the number of survey given over here. Okay? So you can see the responses are being collated, and the statistical team in WEF also look into making sure the scores are being calculated correctly. So what I mean by correctly is that they look into outliers as well. So you can see they will address outliers from the survey scores before they include in the final aggregated scores. So let me just walk you through the quality process of the data management, right? They exclude these few things, right? So these few things are noise. Like for example, response types, they give the same answer, right? To at least 80% of the questions, right? So probably there's a suspicion of people are not really reading the questions. So they're just answering. So these are excluded. Surveys with completion rate inferior to half. Right? So if the completion rate is not full, they may not consider the whole survey. Okay? Respondents who do not have the required level of seniority. Right? So of course, we need to have samples from the industries who can represent the industry. So there's certain level of seniority these executives must. Individual answers tend to score greater than 3. So if you look into the Z-score method, if you standardize it, anything that's more than 3 is out of the 95%, right? Margin of error, right? So anything that's more than 3 is a suspicion of outliers, right? So either the answers are not representative or these are probably wrong, right? So you can see there's a process for them to compute these scores. Yeah? So after taking the average of the scores by questions in the countries, they will try to identify outliers, correct the values using the residual errors. How they do that? They will have what do you call computation or confidence interval, prediction intervals. Right? One is on the mean expected values, one is on the individual expected values. So anything that's not within the intervals will be addressed and perhaps removed or corrected. Right? So on top of that, they also have a year-to-year comparison. Right? For example, they compare this year and last year. Right? They also have the historical data of all the 5 years in consecutive comparison. So with that, they will put weightage on the most recent data, data with the most samples, right? Discounting the past, discounting the samples that are least to calculate the aggregated scores. So the 63 indicators they did in 2020 is proportion. You can see the formula over there. Right? For example, the country value, right, is referred to the raw value, right? They take it away from the worst value and then divided by the best value minus what you call the worst value. So it's like the proportion of how much the country fares to the range of the best possible values the country can have. So the indicator scores are then aggregated to the concepts and then averaged by the priorities. So then you have the aggregated scores. These are being used to compare by countries. So in 2020, they no longer compare 147 countries. They only pick a few countries shown on the page over here to represent emerging economies, developing economies, developed economies, like for example, the high salary economies and so on, to see where these companies fare and their readiness for revival and moving forward to transform. So what we can do by looking into this summary of the different economies when we look at the comparison, how do we take stock of where Malaysia fared? Well, we had the results from 2019, right? So we know where Malaysia fared across different regions, especially in the Asia Pacific region. We know we're behind certain countries. So if the recommendations are true for those countries, naturally apply to us, right? Because we are behind those countries. So even though Malaysia is not included, we can still relatively compare where we are with all these 37 countries and to try to take advantage of the recommendations to move forward. The three timelines. WEF published this by timeline, right? So immediately after the pandemic, we should restrain, the outbreak. Right? So the priorities is for us to try to come back, to try to fix the health crisis, to fix the economic development slowdown. These priorities are immediate. Right? So using the historical analysis before the pandemic, we know where we are. We can then try to come up with a list of priorities for us to restrain this crisis. Moving forward in the next 1-2 years, the recommendation is to revive and to recover. So we need time to recover. It's not easy. 2021, we thought we're going to be better than last year. No. We still see different mutations of COVID-19. We still see new clusters. We still see new outbreak. We still see numbers not coming down. So the midterm priorities is to restart the economy and to treat this as a new norm, to see what we should do to embed people and environment together, right, in the economic policies. Going forward in the long-term priorities, next next 3 to 5 years, this will be needed to reboot our economic system in the long run. So we can still try to go to achieve sustainability and inclusiveness. Right? This word inclusiveness refers to equal opportunity for people, right, across different groups, not just some groups. Right? So we define marginalism, right, when we talk about inclusiveness. Right? So these are the 3 timeline recommendations, and WEF give the recommendations based on these 3 timelines according to the 4 categories. So what I'm going to show you in the coming slides are the four categories, going through all the 4 pillars. Right? So we're not going into details, right? These are just a high-level summary of what WEF proposed in a 3 line on what we should do. Right? So I think if you look into the enabling environment, which is the first category, enabling environment, there are 4 pillars. So you can see these are the details criteria under the 4 pillars. Right? So you can see the environment is what enables the human, right, for us to build back our economy. So you can see the institutions, social capital, transparencies in budgets, in framework, public sector performance, corporate governance, future orientation of government, the stability in the policies, how they adapt to digital business models, how ready we are in trying to move forward with renewable energy, infrastructure, ICT adoption, information, computer technology adoption, right? How we can try to still move forward, in this time of crisis. Right? So the enabling environment looks into all these elements. For those of you who are familiar with other kind of competitiveness report, this is a bit different. But you can see there are some overlaps. There are some overlaps in the enabling environment. Now I'm just going to show you this high-level summary. The 3 timeline, how the recommendations are being put forward. So you can see, I'm not going to read everything. You can read this, but I think in short, even before the pandemic, we already had seen what you call erosion of institution across regions. Yeah. Even before pandemic, the checks and balance in transparencies, for example, they are declining, right? Even before pandemic, we already talked about how the institutions and governance transparencies need to be improved, greater digitalization, and for example, this happened even before the pandemic. Right? So the first column here talks about the current impact, the trends that we have based on historical data. Right? So if you look into the actual report, there are some graphs given to compare the 37 economies, yeah, how they fare. Right? So ICT, for example, adoption rates, we're improving, but we are not improving as fast as we should, right, compared to the region or global trend. Stimulus measure, these are needed because of high public debts. Yeah? Our public debts are high because at a time of crisis, we still need to give aids, stimulus packages to help people go through this hurdle. So this will put more burden in the government's debts. Yeah. So if you look into the revival and transformation area, in the revival timeline, government should improve long-term thinking capacity. I think the government is already doing that. Yeah. So this will enhance public services for greater digitalization and public services adoption. For transformation, government should work to ensure public institutions to embed strong governance principles. Yeah? Again, like I said, to regain public trust, right? Because they need to serve the servants. So other things like high debts, for example, we need to prepare support measures for highly indebted low-income countries, or in our case, we probably have looked into populations in the B40, for example. The proportion of B40 need help to get through this crisis. So how we can then plan to have deleveraging in the future for public debt, knowing that we have to spend to help this group. I think it's not only focused on B40, but I think we have to also focus on shifting to taxation, how we should consider progressive taxation to rethink on how enterprises, how labors are taxed. Because at a time like this, we probably need some kind of cooperative framework, not between public and private, but I think international as well, collaboration, to have some kind of new progressive taxation framework. Of course, we need to be on par with our neighboring country as well. So, for those of you who want to know more, stay tuned, because there are going to be more webinar series coming out to talk in detail on these categories, right? So I'm just giving you a summary. Yeah? So don't worry, there will be more webinars by MPC, dwelling into the details of the indicators and the strategy on the recommendations and those areas. Yeah? So the next is human capital. Human capital, again, is a huge topic. There are two pillars measured by WEF: health of the people and skills of the people. Okay? So under health, they look into the life expectancy. Under skill, they look into the schooling years, the staff training, vocational training, graduate skill sets, digital skill sets. How long our kids are spending their school years, for example, and most importantly, the skills of future workforce. So you're going to see the markets of tomorrow, the skills of tomorrow. Yeah, how we can prepare people to face tomorrow. I think this will be the big topic that you expect to hear from all over. How we can prepare our nations to get ready for future skill, future workforce. Now that the fourth industrial revolution is already here, how we can align ourselves to be still relevant. So the human capital before the crisis is already problematic. Why problematic? You can probably recall skills mismatch, talent shortages, misalignment between incentives and rewards for workers. These are the few problem areas that we already were facing even before the pandemic. Right? So because of the pandemic and the technology adoption is sped up, we have to speed up a lot of the adoptions to deal with this pandemic and how people work and how people live. These challenges, they become more compounded. Why compounded? Because people don't have jobs anymore. People lost their income. Yeah. So if you look into human capital, this is probably not a double whammy, but triple, fourth, multiple whammies that we're facing. Yeah. So I think Mr. Faiz can agree to this.
Yeah.
I think we feel very, very closely to this category, human capital, how we should regain, rebuild, retrain, regroom more human capital in Malaysia. So the revival recommendations is to look into gradual transition. We probably cannot do it overnight. We have to do it slowly. The term here is the furlough workers, meaning those who are taking leaves or those who are not working for the time being because of pandemic or because of other reasons. Like for example, leave, they're taking leave to be absent from work, granted by the organizations, but they're still getting paid. For example, some are getting partial pay, right? So these furlough schemes should be transitioned gradually to see how we can build new labor opportunities for the market. So the transformation going forward is to update, to revise education curriculum, expand investment and the skills that we need for jobs tomorrow, right? Keep using that word. How we can then think parallel our labor laws for the new economy to use new talent management, new management technologies to adapt to the needs of the workforce that we have today. Now, the pandemic has highlighted a second issue. Not only skills, but health, the healthcare system. The healthcare system capacity is already lagging even before the pandemic. So this pandemic actually is a wake-up call for us to know that, hey, you know, we need to probably do more, yeah, to regain back, you know, the health of the people. So the revival is to expand the health system, which we already are doing in Malaysia. The capacity here is increased to manage the higher burden of the pandemic and the future health needs. Transformation is to expand the healthcare, childcare, healthcare, elder care, infrastructure innovation. So for markets, I can see these are the indicators. This refers to local, international trades, yeah, tariffs, flexibility on the labor markets, meritocracy, incentivization. Right? So this refers to how people can gain power, can gain seniority by higher skill, meritocracy, for example, how they can improve the productivity if they have more knowledge and skill, financial system, stability of the financial system, and market size. Right? So you can see this refers to all that. Right? So just to summarize the financial system that we are facing right now. Even before pandemic, the financial system were already fragile. Right? There's some fragility in the economy, meaning the collective net worth of the entrepreneurs on the business, the collective net worth is small compared to what they invest. Right? So if you look into the return on investment, it's not sound. Yeah? So because of that, there will increase liquidity mismatches. Yeah? So these are the current situations. Yeah? So for revival, we need to reinforce the stability of the financial markets, introduce financial incentives to companies to engage in more sustainable and inclusive investment. Transformation to create incentives to direct financial resource towards long-term investment. So you can see the long-term investment is something that we have to start looking at right now, right? To see how we can strengthen stability in the future. Moving on, the last category, which is probably one of the most important ones, innovation ecosystem. Okay. Innovation ecosystem is measured based on entrepreneurial culture, interaction and diversity, R&D, commercialization of new products, new services, how we introduce new things to the market, both locally and internationally. So we know that in the past decades, the entrepreneurial culture was already strong, right? They were strong. There was an increase in many different kinds of entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, habitual entrepreneurs in small businesses, scalable startups, large company, even social entrepreneurs. Yeah? But the creation of these new firms slowed down because of pandemic. And people are not going into uncharted areas because of pandemic uncertainty. Right? So they want something to be more stable. So technology has thus lagged because of this slowdown. Right? So what we should do in the revival is to expand our investment, public investment in R&D. And then in private sector, we can incentivize venture capital, for example, incentivize R&D. So we can promote the technologies, they are both existing and new, to support the creation of new firms. So entrepreneurs, they need a lot of help, especially when some of them are not even at fourth industrial revolution state. You know, they are already trying to look forward, but they are not ready. Right? So let alone we are here talking about markets for tomorrow. Yeah? So the investment on both public and private need to be in place. Transformation is to create incentives to favor long-term investment in R&D, right? To create markets of tomorrow. So these are the summary of the four categories. Yeah. Sorry, my slides are a bit
Long,
out of place.
I
Yes.
saw your slide. Long way to go, right?
Yes. I think
Another
what I'm
10
going to do.
minutes.
Yes. Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'll leave these details because these are comparison of the emerging economies with respect to the different healers. Okay? So these informations are available in a full report of GCR. Right? So I'm not going to bore the audience here with the numbers. Yeah? So I think you can look into the details over here in a full report or in these slides, which are summarized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what is coming up. Yeah? What is coming up? What is in the pipeline of WDF is that in 2021, they're going to be hosting a series of dialogues, right, to develop new benchmarks, new standards, new actions, right, to build the economic models. So with this effort, these are joint effort by, you can see, different councils and economists. You can look up on the web how they introduce the Great Reset. Yeah. So, final words is that I hope the special edition summary, the overview over here today, will serve as a wake-up call for the relevant ministries or people to put this into actions. Right. So again, we are still requiring to be productive, and sustainable, to build back whatever that's lost. If you're interested to know about the Great Resets, the founder of WEF, Klaus Schwab, he has published a book. It's available on the internet. It's called The Great Reset. Yeah? So you can go and search for it to look at more of how this is being in line with what has been published in the GCR. So for those of you who want to know more, also check out our other NPC National Competitiveness webinar series. So let's conclude this sharing. Hopefully we'll have some idea about why and how and what the GCR Special Edition 2020 is.
So, thank you, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you.
Before I move on to the question and answers, I would like to say hi to the participant internationally and locally. We have here Dr. Kamal Chris from India. We have from Bangladesh. We have Diana and Jeffrey from Philippines. Hi, everyone. Hi,
Greetings.
thank you for joining us. We have another session at 3 p.m. with Mr. Lawrence again on the human capital, right?
Yes. In a few hours' time, I'll be sharing the human capital. So I'll be sharing in more details how that category is and how we should strategize to move forward.
And then the other categories also will be shared in the next coming webinar series, right?
Yes.
Okay.
There'll be more of this 1-hour webinar series discussing the different priorities that I summarized just now, the 11 priorities and the thematic areas, human capital, markets, innovative ecosystem, and so on.
Okay, we move on to the question. I got one question from the floor. The question is, what is your view on the role of digital transformation and the adoption of digital tools and technology for both government and business in the private sector, especially micro and SME, to improve the scores of many of the indicators across 12 pillars in GCI? This is the questions by P.W. Wong.
Oh, hi, PW. How are you? Thank you for the question. I think this question is asking for my view, right?
Yeah, your view.
Well, my view can take a few directions. I'm going to go with this direction. We all know that it's something that we cannot avoid. We have to do it, period. Right? So if you look into the private, they know they will have to transition to adopt this, not only digitization, but digitalization. There's a difference. Yeah, we're not just talking about new software, but how we should adopt ICTs, how we should adopt maybe not to the extent of AI or robotic learning, but we have to position ourselves to move towards this direction. Companies know that, but I think it's just like human being, when there's something new, we prefer not to touch it until somebody else, do. Then we can see whether we are moving forward or not. I think what the public sector should have is that I think there are discussion about how much lag behind the public sectors are in this adoption compared to some private sectors. So I think we are trying to set examples in some government departments in trying to adopt digitalization to make, let's say, for example, certain processes to be easier to manage. So this will lessen the burden of the staffs working in the public. Same thing, like for example, these tools, digital tools, will not only help solve the private problems, but it's also helping public. For example, taxation collection, how the private can make use of the tools to make all this process seamless, easily uploaded, easily collated and reviewed by the public sector. So I think both the public and the private sector play a role in making sure the correct digital tools are being introduced and how the incentives are being given to speed up this adoption. Well, my view is that we cannot run away. Future is already here.
So actually, as we know, the digitalization cost is high, especially to the SMEs. So how can they cope with the cost and also the effect of the COVID-19 as maybe the sales is going down, but you have to cope with the digitization which costs them a bit high. So your view, Mr. Ren?
Wow, this is not an easy question to answer. Because SME, we know capital-wise, they are not as strong as the multinational.
Yeah.
And they may not have the right capital to invest in the digital tools compared to MNCs, for example. We know we like to always rely on, our parents.
Yeah.
Government to incentivize, but I think there's a certain extent that we can incentivize because this is going to put burden on the public debts. If we keep on incentivizing the SMEs, what SME can look into is to go back to basic, because what is good for the MNCs may not be good for the SMEs because they are not at the same point in the progression in the business. So they cannot copy, they cannot copy MNC's adoption rate, MNC's way of applying those digitalization because they simply are not ready. So why not ready? Or we can go to a lot of different factors. SME, they have to probably beef up more before they talk about adopting the digital skills and tools. Now, what they can do in the long run, if they are patient, they can look into how to make use of the applications of the digital tools to get the return from the customer. See, all this investment is going to be returned anyway someday. So if their customers, if they can ship this to the customer to say, well, okay, they can create value for the customer by using these digital tools. They transfer the saving to the customer. or they can transfer this cost to the customer because they are creating value to the customer. In the long run, this will be returned somehow. So I think to the SME it's a bit tricky because it's not as straightforward and it's not as immediate compared to perhaps say public or multinational. But that's my view.
Thank you, thank you. Actually, this question is also has been thrown to me, so I don't know how to answer it because there is.
Let's try our best. Let's try
Yeah,
our best to
yeah,
give our
yeah.
thoughts. Yeah,
So,
we are not expert in everything.
yeah,
That
yeah,
we know. But I think you and I, we can see how we can answer it.
yeah. Okay. I think last question. Your view. Should Malaysia follow the recommendation by the World Economic Forum in this specialization?
Um, well, let me put it this way: there will be what do you if those recommendations are appropriate for them, it should be appropriate for us. So I think there are some that we probably cannot simply copy.
Mm.
Again, we may not be ready in some
Yeah.
sense. For example, the progressive taxation, we may not be ready to come up with a new policy framework for the furlough leave workers. Again, we may not be ready, even though we have millions of ringgits dispensed to ease the burden. Some are just one time. So if you're looking into a long-term revision of the policy framework for this area, we probably are not ready. So maybe my view is that for some of the revival recommendations for other countries, it may be our long-term transformation recommendation for Malaysia.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence. Thank you. I think it's about time now. Before I wrap up, any last word from you, Mr. Lawrence?
Well, the last word is to hope that everybody will have a good takeaway from this overview. I know this is a very short overview. It may not answer all the questions you may have, but I guess this will spark interest to go and read up more on this GCR full report. Okay? So again, if you can stay tuned, I will give you bite-sized information to beef up.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, before we end, again, I would like to remind you to fill up the form that is provided in the chat box, and then it will lead you to the MPC certificate of attendance for today. And lastly, and as what you can see in the slide here, MPC will register all of the attendees here as a UPC members in the UPC portal from MPC. So what is UPC? The UPC is the government has established the UPC portal to facilitate stakeholder engagement in its rule-making process. UPC provides members of the public easy access to regulatory consultation through single website. UPC will also contribute in achieving the government commitment to accountability, transparency, and inclusiveness. So if you can see here, you can log in to the portal using your email address. So your email address is the email address that you register from this webinar session. And then you click in the password. So the password is password, PASSWORD. So hopefully this portal is useful for you all. So we will end this webinar session today. Thank you very much, Mr. Lauren, for sharing your knowledge, sharing your opinion to us. So hope all of us can join Mr. Lawrence, and today at the next session at 3 p.m. The topic will be on discussing on the human capital strategy in global competitiveness post COVID-19 in the global competitiveness post COVID-19. So take care, everyone. Stay safe. Stay at home. Hashtag Malaysia Productive. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you, people. Thank you, Mr. Fights,
All right,
for
thank you, Mr.
moderating.
See you again this afternoon.
See you again afterwards.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.